Wait, what? Why am I moving so fast? I'm like a fucking track star. How fast am I actually moving? 200% movement speed. Okay. This is so stupid. Hey guys, RasXX here, and today I want to go over what I believe to be the most enjoyable build for Druid as of right now, and that would be the Werewolf Tornado Druid. I've tried Pulverized Druid up to this point, but what I found to be the biggest drag of that build was it's just very slow. It has no mobility, and just running around dungeons and trying to go in the open world, it just feels like kind of a drag. So the Werewolf Tornado Druid not only has insane single target DPS and a pretty decent actually area of effect damage as well, but most importantly it's just a super fast build. My guy over here, like even without perfect gear at no means, has a whoppering 200% bonus additional movement speed. Just to put that in perspective, that's basically the speed of your mount. And as I said, I don't even have perfect gear, like that could even go much higher. So let's actually talk about the build and how this thing works. A very important aspect that you're going to need for this build is the Dire Wolf aspect. This makes it so when you use Grizzly Rage, which is the ultimate skill we're going to be using, instead of shapeshifting into a bear, you shapeshift into a Dire Werewolf. Instead of getting damage reduction and bonus damage, you will be getting movement speed and spirit cost reduction. This is going to be very important because that will allow us to spam tornadoes. So you actually want to put this aspect on your amulet so you can enjoy the 1.5 multiplier. You also get 10% maximum life every time you kill a unit, so that's also nice. Another very important one will be the Storm Chaser aspect. This makes it so our tornadoes will seek additional enemies, so you want to try and get a good roll on this. I was fortunate enough to get a max roll. We will also be using the Rampaging Werebeast. This is also a very important one. It not only extends the duration of the Grizzly Rage, but it makes it so every time we critical strike while Grizzly Rage is active, our next critical strike will be doing 10% more damage. So this accumulates very fast, and we will be doing insane numbers of critical strike damage. So this is actually a very important one. For your helm, this is actually a must-have for this build, and probably one of the biggest cons for this build. This build does not work if you do not drop this unique helm, so it's kind of stuck behind a unique drop and getting this by luck. This basically makes it so storm skills are now also werewolf skills. With this helm actually allows you to use tornadoes while you are a werewolf. If you don't have this, the build will not work. For our chest piece, we're using the Mad Wolf's Glee, another ancestral unique. You actually don't have to have this one. It's not a must-have. It's just nice if you get it. This makes it so werewolf form is now our true form, and we gain +2 ranks to all werewolf skills, which is now also our tornado because of the helm. If you don't have this one, you can just use any kind of ancient legendary chest piece with defensive rolls and a defensive aspect. That will also be fine. For the gauntlets, we're using the Earthen Might passive, also applies to storm skills, the Mighty Storms aspect. This is very important because it will allow us to utilize Earthen Might with our tornadoes, because usually this is a passive that only works with earth spells, but now if you have this one, you can also use it with tornado. For the pants, I'm using Disobedience. This is actually not the best in slot pants. You would rather have Temerity. I did not drop Temerity, so I'm opting for the Disobedience. This makes it so every time I deal damage, I will be getting armor. The Ghost Walker boots is the one we're using for the boots, the Ghost Walker aspect. This makes it so while we are unstoppable, and for 4 seconds after, we gain 25% increased movement speed. While we are using Grizzly Rage, we will always be unstoppable, so this is very good for us. And it also allows us to move freely through enemies, which is very important for not getting stuck. If enemies circled around you, you can just move through them. For the weapon, I'm using Accelerating aspect. This is actually a very important one as well for the build. It makes it so every time we critical strike with our core skills, which is Tornado, we get increased attack speed. Attack speed is very important for this build, because the more attack speed we have, the faster we're using tornadoes, the more tornadoes we're using at every given time, and the faster we will be accumulating critical strikes with the Rampaging Werebeast. For the totem, I'm using the retaliation aspect. This makes it so every time we are fortified, we gain more damage with our core skills. This is actually also not the best one to use. If you have temerity, which I don't have, I would probably rather use this one, the Conceited. It makes it so we deal more damage while we have a barrier active, and if we have Temerity, we will always be having a barrier active. I don't have it, so I'm using this one over here. So that's a quick brief of the gear. Let's actually go into the skills. The skills are pretty straightforward. You start off with Storm Strike. Storm Strike is the best one because it gives us 25% damage reduction for 3 seconds, which is very, very important for survivability. If you go down the Fierce Storm Strike route, you will also get Storm Strike has a 50% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. This is very, very good for boss vulnerability uptime. Going down here, of course, we're maxing Tornado, and I took Raging Tornado. This makes it so Tornado has a 10% chance to make units vulnerable. Also another vulnerability uptime. This is very good. Down here, we're going to take Heart of the Wild, basically just so we can max Wild Impulses. This makes it so our Tornadoes will be doing more damage but cost more Spirit. We don't really care about the cost more Spirit aspect of this because we have insane Spirit cost reduction. Down here, we're going to want to take Predatory Instinct. This makes it so we critical strike against close enemies. The chance is higher. Because we are a semi-melee build, we will usually be very close to enemies, so this is very good for us. You're also going to want to take this one here, which grants you more movement speed while you are a werewolf. Down here, we will be taking, for the defensive skills, we will be using Cyclone Armor. Cyclone Armor not only grants us passively damage reduction against non-physical damage, it also is an active. While you use it, it knocks back enemies. So if you ever get stuck in the middle of a pack or stuck by mobs, you can just use this one to help free yourself. You will also be wanting to take the Preserving Cyclone Armor. This makes it so every 10 seconds we gain 30% damage reduction for 2 seconds, which is very good. We will also be using Blood Howl. Blood Howl is basically just a heal. It heals you for maximum life. But it also has this one over here, the Preserving Blood Howl, which grants us attack speed 15% for 4 seconds, which is very, very good with the build as mentioned before. In addition, every time you kill a unit, you will be gaining 1 second of cooldown. If you kill enough enemies, you can basically have 100% uptime on the attack speed buff. So very, very good. You'll also be wanting to take Ancestral Fortitude, which grants us non-physical resistances, and Vigilance, which gives us 15% damage reduction for 6 seconds every time we use a defensive skill, which will be both Cyclone Armor and Blood Howl, so we can basically have 100% uptime on the damage reduction. For the companion skills, you don't take anything. This is just not good. Rat skills. You want to take a point in Hurricane. Hurricane is actually very good for us. It does 2 things for us mainly. First of all, it will slow enemies for us, and it will also help us keep vulnerability up. But most importantly, it always circles around you, and it keeps hitting enemies, and it can actually rack up critical stacks. Critical hit stacks. It critical hits a lot, and that will help us accumulate our damage here with a Rampaging Werebeast. So Hurricane is actually pretty good. You want to take Elemental Exposure, at least 1 point. This will make it so Storm Skills, which is our Tornadoes once again, has a 10% chance to make enemies vulnerable. So we have multiple sources of keeping our vulnerability up. We also want 2 points in Endless Tempest. This will increase the duration of our Hurricane. Now down here is where a build gets really interesting. You want to take 1 point in Neurotoxin. This makes it so poisoned enemies are slowed. Why do we take this? Because we're maxing Toxic Claws. This makes it so every time we critical strike with a Werewolf skill, which is our Tornadoes, we will be applying poison. So now that we're applying poison and poison is slowing enemies, we can utilize any kind of affix that is crowd control damage, damage to slowed enemies. All of these kind of affixes on our gear will now work with this build. You also want to max Envenom. This is additional critical strike damage to poisoned enemies. Down here for our ultimate, we'll be using Grizzly Rage like mentioned before. You want to take the Prime, which makes you unstoppable, and the Supreme Grizzly Rage, which makes us gain Fortify every second Grizzly Rage is active. This will synergy very well with the retaliation aspect. You also wanna go up here and get 3 points in Defiance. Defiance makes it so nature magic skills deal additional damage to elites. That's our Tornadoes. You also want to get Circle of Life, which will heal us every time we use Spirit. Resonance is also a good one. You can put some points into here. This will increase the nature magic skills damage even further. So once again, Tornadoes. You want to get 1 point in Defiance, basically just so you can max the Nature's Resolve. This will make it so every time we get struck, we have a chance to gain Fortify. Because we are basically a semi-melee build, we will be getting struck a lot, and this will help us with Fortify uptime. For our key passive, obviously we're using Earth and Might as mentioned before. This will be insane for our build because if we proc it, we will not only restore all of our spirit, but we get 5 seconds of guaranteed critical strike hits, which is very, very good to accumulate critical strike damage with our aspect here, the Rampaging Werebeast. So that's basically it for the skills. We can go pretty quickly about the spirit boons. You want to bond with your snake. This will allow you will allow us to use 2 snake skills. So the ones you're going to want to use is Calm Before the Storm. This will make it so every time we use nature magic skills, we have a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown of our ultimate skill, which is the Grizzly Rage. You also want to use this one over here. This will make it so critical strikes with shapeshifting skills, which is our Tornado, will heal us for maximum life. Very good. Over here, you're going to want to use the Calamity one. This will extend the duration of our ult. You also want to use the Avian Wrath, which will give us more critical strike damage. And I'm using Wariness for more survivability against elites. We can quickly go around the Paragon. 1 second. Paragon. Okay, so basically there's a couple ways you can go about this. I'm just going to show what I did, and then I can give some more examples of other options. I went for a more DPS oriented kind of Paragon board. So the first one I'm using is Spirit. I think it's very important. This will make it so we deal much more critical strike damage with our core skills, and every time we critical strike, we increase the damage the enemy is taking for us by up to 12%. Obviously, being a critical strike build, this is very self-explanatory why this is good. The second one I'm using is Exploit. Exploit will increase our vulnerability damage, but also will make it so every time we strike an enemy for the first time, it becomes vulnerable for 3 seconds. 3 seconds is usually enough to kill any kind of mob that is not a boss. So very, very good one over here. I also took Lust for Carnage, which makes it so every time a critical strike we restore spirit, which is very important for being able to spam tornadoes. The third one I'm using is Werewolf. This increases the damage while we are in werewolf form, which is all the time, and also giving us damage reduction, which is very important for survivability. Another very important legendary node is Thunderstruck. It increases our critical strike damage against vulnerable enemies, which is basically everyone we're hitting because of the exploit. Down over here, another important legendary node is Heightened Malice. This will make it so every time we have 3 or more poisoned enemies nearby, we deal 45% increased damage because we are using this skill over here. The Toxic Claws, we are always applying poison, and it's very, very common to have 3 or more poisoned enemies nearby. So this is just a flat 45% increased damage, which is insane. I haven't really opened my 4th glyph socket yet, but the one I want to use is Territorial over here. This will make it so we have damage reduction and increased damage to close enemies, which is because we're a semi-melee build. This will basically be all the enemies, so very, very good. Another good one you can use is Undaunted. This basically does the same thing, but gives damage reduction and increased damage based on Fortify. I see a lot of people using Fang and Claw, which will give us increased damage while we are in a werewolf form to close enemies. A lot of people also use Earth and Sky. This will boost your tornado damage against vulnerable enemies. If you have, there's another one you can use. It's called Guzzler. Let's see if I have it, if I can find it. Guzzler. So this is only good if you have Temerity, but this will basically increase your damage while you are healthy. If you have Temerity, you'll basically always have a barrier up, so it's very likely you will be healthy. And then Guzzler is actually also a very viable one. So that's basically it for the build, guys. Thank you for watching. So now we're going to showcase the single target damage on a Nightmare Dungeon boss. This is a level 51 Nightmare Dungeon. So this boss is like 20 levels above me. Let's see how this goes. Okay, this is actually insane. He dies so fast. Okay. There you have it, guys. That was like, what, 7 seconds? So we use our ult, we try to stay close for the single target close damage, and you guys can see the crits. You can see the numbers, how does it go up? They go up. Already for 400k, 500k crits. And Avarice is just actually getting obliterated. Now we don't have ult, so we're in our off rotation. We need to wait for it again, it's up in 4. And now we can go back blasting. And once again we can see the crits. The single target damage is actually insane on this build. actually stupid how fast the world boss just drops. And there you have it, 1 minute run.